Germany, October 1885. A newly built steamship rests in the harbor, its iron hull humming with anticipation. The SS Eider is preparing to cross the Atlantic, carrying more than 1,000 passengers toward a country most of them have never seen. They are farmers, laborers, craftsmen, families fleeing poverty, rigid social systems, and limited futures. This voyage is not unusual. The 1880s mark one of the largest waves of European migration in history. Over the course of the decade, more than 1.4 million Germans will leave their homeland for the United States. Their names will blur together in passenger manifests and census records, remembered only by descendants and archivists, all but one. Among the crowd on the dock is a 16-year-old barber's apprentice from a small Bavarian village. He carries little more than basic training, ambition, and a willingness to leave everything familiar behind. His name is Friedrich Trump, later known in America as Frederick Trump. At the time, his decision seems ordinary, but decades later it will be recognized as the first step in the creation of one of the most famous and controversial families in American history. Origins in Germany. Frederick Trump was born on March 14, 1869 in Karlstadt, a quiet wine-growing village nestled in what was then the Kingdom of Bavaria. His birth name was Friedrich Trump, a name shaped by a region that had spent generations shifting between French and German rule. Borders changed, loyalties shifted, but one constant remained: obligation to the state. Bavaria enforced mandatory military conscription, a reality that hung over every young man's future. Service was not optional, and failure to comply carried serious legal consequences. Frederick's early life was marked by loss. His father, Christian Johannes Trump, worked as a vintner and died while Frederick was still a child. The family was left financially vulnerable, and from a young age, Frederick understood that survival depended on work. At 13, he was sent away from Karlstadt to the nearby town of Frankenthal to apprentice as a barber. Apprenticeships were grueling. Long hours, menial tasks, and little pay were standard, but the trade offered something valuable: portability. A barber could work anywhere people gathered, and people were gathering in cities and new countries at unprecedented rates. By 16, Frederick had completed his training. He had a skill, limited prospects at home, and a looming military obligation. Like many young men of his generation, he began to look outward. Migration to America. Frederick came of age during the height of European mass migration. Industrialization had disrupted traditional rural economies. Populations were growing faster than jobs. Land was scarce, wages were low, and social mobility was tightly constrained. America, by contrast, promised something radical: movement. You could fail and try again. You could change professions. You could move west. For many, that possibility mattered more than certainty. In October 1885, Frederick boarded the SS Eider in Bremen. The journey across the Atlantic lasted 10 days and offered little comfort. Steerage passengers slept in cramped quarters, ate simple food, and endured rough seas. But the destination outweighed the discomfort. When the ship reached New York Harbor, Frederick entered the United States through Castle Garden, the immigration center that operated years before Ellis Island opened. He was processed, documented, and released into a city already swollen with immigrants like him. Frederick settled on the Lower East Side, where German-American communities provided language familiarity and social connections. Almost immediately, he found work as a barber. His training allowed him to earn wages faster than many newcomers, and from the beginning, he focused on saving rather than spending. The New York years. Life in New York was unforgiving. Tenement apartments were overcrowded and poorly ventilated. Workdays were long. Competition among immigrants was fierce, especially in skilled trades. Frederick moved frequently, following opportunity and family connections. Each relocation reflected adaptability rather than instability. He understood that advancement required motion. By his early 20s, Frederick had achieved something crucial. He had accumulated capital, not a fortune, but enough to think beyond survival. Like many ambitious men of his era, he looked west, not out of desperation, but calculation. The American West and the gold rush economy. In the early 1890s, Frederick left New York for Seattle, a city rapidly rebuilding and expanding after the Great Fire of 1889. The Pacific Northwest was transforming into a gateway for miners, traders, and entrepreneurs chasing opportunity in remote territories. Frederick did not head west to dig for gold. He recognized a simple economic truth: most prospectors failed. The real money was made by those who supplied them. He opened restaurants and small hotels in boomtowns tied to mining activity, including Monte Cristo and Bennett. These towns surged overnight as rumors of gold spread, drawing thousands of men willing to spend money on food, lodging, alcohol, and companionship. Frederick's establishments catered to that demand. They offered meals, beds, and services that prospectors needed after exhausting days. Some also functioned as brothels, a common and largely tolerated feature of frontier economies. Morality followed money, and money followed miners. When the Klondike gold rush erupted in the late 1890s, Frederick was positioned perfectly. His businesses thrived in places where few stayed long, but many passed through. He reinvested profits, expanded operations, and avoided the speculative traps that ruined so many others. By the end of the decade, Friedrich Trump had accumulated a substantial fortune. He had done so not through luck, but through timing, observation, and discipline. Return to Germany and forced exit. In 1901, Frederick returned to Karlstadt a wealthy man. He arrived with confidence, ambition, and the intention to settle permanently. In 1902, he married Elizabeth Christ, a neighbor from his village. But the state remembered him. Because Frederick had left Germany before completing mandatory military service, Bavarian authorities viewed him as having evaded conscription. Legal proceedings followed. Frederick attempted to argue his case, emphasizing his long absence and productive life abroad, but the law was inflexible. After years of appeals, he lost. He was ordered either to submit to military service or leave Germany permanently. In 1905, Frederick and his pregnant wife emigrated to the United States for the final time. This departure was not a gamble, it was a forced choice. Germany was closed to him. Queens and real estate. Back in New York, Frederick made a decisive shift. He moved away from hospitality and toward real estate and construction, recognizing that stable wealth was built on land and housing. Queens was transforming rapidly. Infrastructure projects, including bridges and transit expansion, were connecting it more closely to Manhattan. Population growth was accelerating, driven by working and middle-class families seeking affordable homes. Frederick began building modest houses, practical, efficient, and accessible. He understood his market. These were not luxury properties. They were investments designed to appreciate alongside the city. The timing was precise. As Queens grew, property values rose. Frederick reinvested profits, expanded cautiously, and avoided overreach. He was not chasing spectacle. He was building a foundation. Death and legacy. In May 1918, as the Spanish flu swept through New York during its first devastating wave, Frederick Trump fell ill. He died at the age of 49. He left behind a widow, 3 children, multiple properties, and a stable financial base. It was not an empire, but it was a platform. His eldest son, Fred Trump, would later expand that platform dramatically, turning regional success into lasting wealth and influence. Frederick Trump did not seek fame. He did not build skyscrapers or dominate headlines, but he made decisions that mattered. He migrated at the right moment. He accumulated capital early, and he placed his family inside a rapidly growing American city. Without Frederick Trump, there is no Fred Trump. And without Fred Trump, there is no Donald Trump. History often remembers the final figure in a dynasty, but dynasties rarely begin with power. They begin with movement, calculation, and the courage to leave home. And sometimes they begin with a 16-year-old boarding a steamship into the unknown.